You're listening to Pop This, the podcast where two women talk about everything pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen and Andrea Warner.
So I've been making my own granola. I guess we should introduce that we are still, I don't know what is the right wording? We're not quarantined. We're on lockdown, are we self-isolating or in lockdown conditions?
We're just sort of in lockdown, I think. Like
this is lockdown, currently, isn't it?
Yeah, this is currently week 7 for us, but future us, when this episode comes out, it'll be like week 9.
Right, yeah. So I'm finding I'm getting more and more like earthy, for lack of a better word. Gardening now. I've got like an egg carton on the windowsill with basil seeds.
That's so cute.
There are 9 of them now.
Wow.
Aww.
Yeah, and they're coming up, and I feel pretty proud of that particular situation. And then I made my own granola, and then I put parchment paper down, as people do, on the baking sheet, so it doesn't stick to the baking sheet. And then I saved that parchment paper. I don't know why. I'm like, am I in the depression? I might need this parchment paper to later write a letter or my will, or I don't know. I'm feeling this overwhelming urge to just be like making things and setting things up. So like if the apocalypse happens, I'm kind of ready. Have either of you experienced this?
I feel like I'm being more like we're eating our leftovers like more than I would normally, or we're using all of the food up in our fridge, trying it like before I would never take the time to think of like, oh, I have, this head of lettuce. What am I going to do with it to make dinner tonight? It would be more like, what do I feel like eating tonight? But now it's like totally directed by like what I have on hand.
Yeah, you can wash that kale off. I don't know how long it's been there, but give it a rinse. See what happens.
Well, I, as you both probably know, am not someone who likes to cook. I don't cook at all. And so this has been quite an adjustment for me. But we used to eat out all the time and go out all the time, and we were never at home. And so this has been very different. And Carlos has cooked a lot. Like, he has cooked all these meals, and like I've eaten leftovers. I've learned to like things that I had never
leftovers.
No, honestly, I don't normally like leftovers. Like, this is a big deal for me. Eating the same thing a couple days in a row has been kind of like a unique experience for me. Again, this is like the most privileged thing I could ever possibly say. And then now that he is working more, so before he was just being paid to stay home, now he's working at home. And I actually made lunch for us the other day, and this is me like petty bragging, but I cooked a chicken breast in a saute pan, and didn't poison any of us, and made us little chicken burgers. And I shredded some Balderson's aged cheese, and I put in a little bit of barbecue sauce, and I made us little chicken sliders, and it was really tasty.
Wow. When was the last time you did something like that?
When I lived alone, so at least 12 years ago.
Sorry.
Because I always laugh at the classic story you told me about the first time you made macaroni and cheese.
Oh, and how I didn't realize the water had to come out?
Yeah, you didn't realize you had to drain the water.
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, I was 14 or 15. I was babysitting, and I just I had no idea.
So it was a soup.
Yeah. Obviously, no one ate it, but it was. Yeah, I've learned to like macaroni and cheese again. I had really hated it for the longest time, and Carlos does some stuff where he adds in a couple of extra kinds of cheeses. And before, I would turn my nose up at it. And then finally one night I was just hungry enough that I was okay, fine, I want to taste this.
Why would you turn your nose up at cheese?
No, I love cheese, but I just
Oh.
didn't really. I was like macaroni because I don't really like pasta that much. That's the other thing. It turns out I love lasagna. Who knew?
So
Guys,
you've never had lasagna? Like, what did you
no,
like?
I've
I've
had
eaten out with you.
lasagna.
I guess I've never really noticed what it is you're ordering. What is there like? It sounds
It's
like you
usually,
order
like-
from the child's menu. Really, is what this sounds like.
Well, I mean, I can sometimes. I like other stuff too. Like I was a vegetarian for 5 years, and so I am as likely to order like a tofu teriyaki as I am maybe like
Okay.
a few other things. But I have very specific. Like I don't like certain textures. I don't like certain. It's mostly textures.
Mm.
Yeah, like I'm not that keen on pastas or noodle soups.
Which breaks my heart because
I know.
we eat lunch a lot together.
I know.
Yeah, every soup that you can get a noodle in is my favorite from whatever country.
Me too.
Like honestly,
Yeah.
and the greatest thing is that every country has a different way to put a noodle in a soup,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right? I mean, and they're all different, and I love all of them.
I feel like it's actually a good thing for me that Andrea won't eat soup because otherwise I'd probably eat ramen every day at work for lunch. And it'd be a very high sodium level situation for me.
Well, my problem right now is that Carlos makes delicious bagels. And so I've become a real like he
He makes
me a
his
break-
own bagels. Like, you don't have to talk about toasting them. Like he actually makes
he makes his
bagel?
own bagels, and then he like makes me a delicious breakfast sandwich, and it's so good.
Does he sell these? Because I'll buy a dozen.
He's oftentimes been like, why don't we just go buy them from Rosemary Rock Salt? Because the amount of time it takes me to make these
Oh, I
like
can
12
imagine.
bagels. He's like,
What style does he do?
He does the New York style, not the Montreal style. He wants to
Oh.
try the Montreal style.
Montreal's the
but-
boiled kind, right? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
So-
best kind.
I mean, you know that I love a New York bagel. It's just
which is it? So New York is what? Like, what's like just fluffy? I don't know if I've had lots of bagels, but
it's fluffier. It's like baked in the oven. And,
okay,
Yeah.
I mean either or, right? I mean,
I love them both, but I do tend towards the New York style.
and then slather it with some cream cheese and put some lox on it and some capers.
No.
And slice. Oh, wow.
Well, he's
Right.
been making me like an egg and cheese breakfast sandwich
Yeah, I
on the
eat that
bagel.
too.
Oh, so good.
Gosh. Okay.
Now I'm hungry, you guys. It's
I know.
I just
this
ate
is
2 bowls of leftovers and they were both really unsatisfying.
Oh,
oh
I'm sorry.
It was fine. It's just that it was the end of 2 things.
Yeah.
So I tried to make one meal out of the end of 2 things, and they were very different. So one was, because I like cooking, so one was quite a delicious lentil coconut peanut soup,
Hmm.
and the other one was a spicy peanut soba noodle salad.
Oh, that sounds like it should fit together.
But they don't. They didn't.
Yeah, I'm
There was
sorry.
like more tomato in one than the other.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and but I really like peanuts, so anything I can put peanuts in. So yeah, it should have worked, but it did not. So then I'm thinking of having some more granola, but then there was the wine anyway. The food thing is a lot right now. It's all I kind of think about.
For a movie that is set in Chicago, there's precious little food in this film, and it made me so sad.
Oh my God, except for macaroni.
Except
and
for the
cheese.
hot dog. Well, the macaroni and cheese and a hot dog, and then an
Even that
eclair.
young boy knew how to strain that. Did you notice?
Look, he was 15. I maybe was 14. There's like that really critical year.
That year is really the cooking year, they call
So
it.
it is really the cooking
Or
year. Yeah,
you-
for
yeah.
sure.
The year you learned to read instructions on the
Yeah.
box.
Well, okay, I will admit that's actually still kind of a problem to this day. Like, I refuse to read instructions on like making IKEA furniture. Like, I don't learn well by like reading a set of instructions. I always want to just sort of like go by instinct, which is a terrible idea.
Just
So
with IKEA, that is a step-by-step process with,
yeah, I
It's
have,
a
screwed
recipe
up,
up-
for disaster.
yeah.
I have screwed up so many things at IKEA, and I don't like assemble the furniture anymore.
I was gonna say, you're that person that you finish that chair and then there's like 7 pieces left over and you're like, well,
Eh. we're recording at home.
We are.
We can be and we're drinking while we record now.
Sure
we
are.
can be as messy as we want. I'm
Like
Andrea Warner.
you and a strainer there with some pasta. I'm Lisa Christiansen, and
I'm Andrea Gin.
Woo!
and this is Pop This, the lockdown. No, that sounds like I'm in prison. Lock. Is that what it is? Lockdown? Isolation?
Edition?
We're at home.
We're at home.
Pop this at home. That's what, we're not giving you
let's just call
tours.
it that.
Pop this at home. We're
That's
not giving you tours of our abodes yet, but check in with us on week 32.
That's when we're just laying on the floor, dangling a microphone somewhere near our mouths.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly it's just constantly in a just sort of like all of us are just in lie down positions, just sort of flailing against our beds, and it's anyway, I'm still holding it together. How are you guys?
No, good. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
fine.
we're at the point in quarantine though where we want to watch movies from our childhood.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, nostalgia. And although I have heard people say, and I agree, there is a kind of weird you could big crowds of people, like we did that, like when I'm watching things, I am feeling very strange about that now.
Yeah, you kind of just like, oh yeah, that's what a city looks like.
Mhm.
So we are talking about adventures in babysitting today, and I have to say I am very excited about this. I'm so fresh. I just watched it this afternoon, but I watched it using our Disney Plus subscription, and they edit it for content, and so
What could they edit out?
well, it turns out what they edit out is all the swearing. And they also edit out the homophobia.
Oh.
So that's actually a nice edit.
Yeah.
I miss the swearing because the swearing really empowered me as an 8-year-old. Like, when this movie came out in 1987, I must have seen it. I didn't see it in the theater for sure, but I'm sure we rented it like immediately. So maybe I was like 8 or 9 when I saw it for the first time. And I remember like my sister and I doing the dance in the beginning. It was
that song that then he kissed me?
he walked, and then he
Oh.
kissed me. We did the dance. We wanted all the outfits that Elizabeth Shue was wearing. I know there was only a couple, but I remember like "Don't F with the Babysitter" was a classic. Like, I was filling in the swears because it turns out I know this movie that well that like I was watching it with my best friends over the internet together. And I was filling in the swears, and I was like telling them what they were missing out by not getting the swears from the Disney version.
All right then. Wow, I was doing none of that. I was I just don't. We're all different people, and I guess the one thing that really surprised me about the movie, and now AWU grew up in the city. And I
Yes.
know that AG and I are both suburban kids.
Yes.
And so it's really funny to think about how I really did feel those things about the city. Like, I would go into Vancouver, but I remember being told that people will try to give you drugs and make you become addicted. And at no point did I ever ask, why would they do this? Like, what? Are they a cult? Are they trying for new members?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't occur to me to ask a follow-up question to that. It was just a caution. And when you went downtown, you were careful. And when you got back off the bus, the 351 for me, and I think probably the what was yours? A 602 or something in Tawasin?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you know that? How do you
Because
Wow.
those suburban buses, there were very few of them coming out of downtown that would take you home.
Yeah.
And especially if you were, just waiting, you would either see that Tawasin bus go by, or I would see the 351 or something. There weren't a lot of them.
So were either of you babysitters as teens?
Oh yeah, my God! I started babysitting
yeah.
when I was like 11.
Yeah, it was, and it was never good. I mean,
I I I liked it enough. I mean I babysat a lot. Like yeah. I also had a job as a cleaner in a daycare at like a YWCA after I got off classes in, I think it was in grade 8 or grade 9. It was the first time I was part of a union. Anyway, yeah, it was like I was around children a lot. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind it. I liked it, but when I think now about the amount of responsibility on an idiot, it does make me kind of
I honestly can't believe people let me look after their
yeah. I
children.
just like I mean the number of things that can go wrong, and how everybody like my friend had this theory, and it makes me laugh all the time. Like, ask a parent if they'll lend you their car, and they're like, "What?" And they're like, "But you can take care of my kid."
I guess they always figure, honestly, like the way that I'm seeing a lot of my friends with kids, like how what they're going through in this particular isolation, I kind of understand it. They're just like, I can't be around my children 24/7. I need
Yeah.
to give them, I will pay you now to take them
Yes.
away
Yes.
double what I would have paid you in non-isolation times. So I sort of get it a little bit, I guess. But I mean, I don't have children, so I can't, I can't for sure say, but I know that like I also babysat a lot of interesting children. Like there were, I mean, I think
Were
I was
fires?
doing
Were there?
I was doing like basically like child psychology as a babysitter on like with several different kids. Like one time I sent my best friend to go look after my high school best friend. I sent her to go babysit in my stead because I couldn't make it for whatever reason. And the 5-year-old pulled a giant butcher knife on her. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
wow.
intense. Like these were some,
Oh,
not all, but anyway, yeah. And I
yeah.
just, yeah, a lot of kids. A lot of kids.
But so do you think that is why you love this movie so much as a kid? Because you're like, the hero's a babysitter.
Well,
I know.
I definitely was always looking for movies in which the heroes were. So here's the thing that I really loved. I loved heroes that were girls. I loved heroes that had cool outfits. I loved heroes that like had boys' names, like like quote unquote gender binary crap boys' names, because I always felt like I had such a like classically sort of like feminine old lady name. I was always just like, but I wouldn't, it's not like I ever wanted to be called Andy. That was gross. I hated that. But I always thought it would be so cool to have like a gender neutral name that like was sort of skewing towards boys. Like I thought like girls named Jordan I thought were so cool. And so like this girl named Chris as like the lead in the film, I thought that was super cool. And I liked that she swore and that she seemed, and I have always had a lifelong obsession with owning a camel duffel coat or whatever like a style of coat that is that she has in the film, which I had forgotten until I saw Elizabeth Shue wearing the camel coat in the movie, even though camel does nothing for my coloring. I've always wanted to have one of those camel coats because I thought it was just so cool.
So okay. First,
Sorry.
we forgot to summarize the movie.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I just went into like it's fine.
Yeah.
And also
So,
like
yeah.
also
Mhm.
feel free if you hated this film, it's okay. I
Yeah.
don't mind. I can take it. I'm not so precious about it. I just know that like there's for many reasons I love it, for many reasons it's not good, and for many reasons it is good. Anyway.
But
Yeah.
for those of the audience who haven't seen it, maybe we should give a quick.
Let them know. We have a synopsis, don't we?
Yeah.
Here in our
Yeah, we've got a whole synopsis, a background. There's like so much information.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do the synopsis here. When plans with her boyfriend fall through, high school senior Chris Parker, played by Elizabeth Shue, ends up babysitting the Anderson kids, Brad and Sarah. What should be a quiet night in, however, turns into a series of ridiculous exploits, starting when they leave the house to pick up Chris's friend Brenda. Soon, Brad's buddy Daryl is involved, and the group must contend with car thieves, blues musicians, and much more.
I just love the idea that blues musicians are the same as car thieves.
So
I
wait, Lisa, as a teen, is that what you, as a White Rock teen, is that what you sort of thought?
as I thought what life would look like. Life
You know,
was
In the
like
city.
blues musicians were as frightening as car thieves.
sure, of course, anything that was in the city had an element of danger for sure, right? Movie theaters, what's going on in there? Like, yeah, it was all felt very, very dangerous. The suburbs feel very, very safe. They do. And
Well,
that's why people go there.
it's so
I'm
interesting
not
to me
saying they
because
are. You notice I said
no,
feel.
I know.
Yeah.
I just always remember having a bit of that city kid snobbery, like towards the suburbs, and I remember
Well,
even
you
from
should
like a
have
real.
because we thought the city people were idiots. So I don't know where you got the snobbery thing from.
But
Did
I
you think
remember
we
like
wanted to be city people?
yes, deep down, yes, 100%. I was like, you want the sophistication of city living,
We didn't even know that was a
but
word. So no, there's no way.
no, I truly I remember like in this movie it's so strange. It wasn't like I wanted to be Chris, but I also had this like weird affinity for every single city dweller, no matter how like no matter who they were or what they were like, because I enjoyed the ways in which these like suburban kids were scandalized by the city. It really brought me a lot of pleasure to see them tortured by the city, but then to also see them understand that the city has lots of good things and bad things and that both exist in the world. It's a weird movie for me, but it really hits me on so many levels and layers.
Yeah, it makes me feel very like for the most part I like it because I like those one night movies. Like
Yeah,
one of my favorites is that Martin Scorsese film After Hours with Griffin Dunn. Do you know that one?
I've never seen it.
Oh, which apparently they made Elizabeth Shue watch. Chris Columbus did because it's
Oh,
kind of
cool.
a yeah, a bit of a blueprint. So it's just one guy's crazy night trying to get home.
Hmm.
Um, so I love those kinds of movies. But no, I watching it again, it really did remind me of that real urban suburban divide. Like it's just not a coincidence, and always in Chicago. All those because growing up, all those John Hughes films were always in like the suburbs as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, you
Well,
know,
one of the things I read when I was researching is that they originally wanted Molly Ringwald in this role.
sure. I mean, yeah,
I
I
can
can see
totally see
that.
that. Yeah, I can totally see that. I feel like Elizabeth Shue brings like she seems older than Molly Ringwald did at the time though. Like Elizabeth Shue, I forgot that she was only a high school senior in the movie. Like I thought she was in. I had misremembered that she was already in college.
I was the only other thing. Molly Ringwald is too cool. Like she's got a Elizabeth Shue plays very kind of like flat, pretty girl from the suburbs very well.
That's a solid point. Yeah, yeah. All
So,
right.
A-Dub, do you want to
We're
go over the background just so we can
Oh
get
yeah.
that out of the way?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So just like in case people don't know, and I learned things in this background as well. So thank you, AG, for putting it together. Adventures in Babysitting, also known as A Night on the Town in certain countries, is a 1987 American teen comedy film written by David Simpkins and directed by Chris Columbus in his directorial debut, which is pretty cool. I didn't know this was his debut. He'd also written screenplays for Gremlins and Goonies, and obviously since then has directed like Home Alone 2, Mrs. Doubtfire, Stepmom, 9 Months, Harry Potter films, The Help, bunch of stuff. And the film was it was produced. I'm not going to go through like the list of everybody that stars in it, but the movie was produced by Deborah Hill, who did Halloween 1, 2, and 3, which actually really fits with Adventures in Babysitting, I think. And she sadly passed away in 2005 from cancer. And also produced by Linda Obes, who did Interstellar, Contact, and Sleepless in Seattle. There's also a remake of the film, again on the Disney Channel, so I saw that as an option when I was like starting to watch this. That apparently is like super good and really well reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, there you go.
I'm not gonna watch it, but like
I wonder how they changed it for the children of today.
Oh, I watched the trailer. They seem to change it quite significantly. Like I think it's really only in principle and sort of like conceit only. It's not like it's not really the same.
Okay, could
Yeah.
you imagine if they're remaking it, that the kids get a flat tire, and then the man who comes to save them decides instead to go and shoot his wife and her lover? I
So
mean,
I
right off the top, I'd forgotten that whole subplot
I
there, and I went, "Oh, are you kidding me?" Like
I
yeah.
that's
fully
like
forgot.
full on like murder,
Yeah.
harassment, abuse,
Yeah,
like
yeah. Yeah.
of a my jaw,
Yes.
honestly. So I'm really, really serious when they sat down. Two things I'll say for sure that they would take out, and also our weird subplot that, oh, she just looks like Miss March in Playboy.
Yeah.
It's yep, that is a super strange subplot.
That's a
I
question I have, is that like Playboy comes up so much in
The
this
little
movie.
girl, little what's her name again?
Sarah.
Sarah,
Sarah is running around the whole
With a
movie with a
Playboy.
Playboy in their backpack.
But like
and
was
no one questions anything.
No.
was Playboy so prevalent in the 80s? Like
Yes,
were
and
there billboards and everyone read the
But it was a
magazine and
dirty magazine. It wasn't like people were like the
but
joke
that's what I
about
mean.
reading the articles. It wasn't, I mean, sure, Penthouse would have been another step. Yeah. So it
for
wasn't
sure.
that, but
I
but I
didn't
mean,
I
But yeah,
didn't quite realize how it was everywhere in the 80s if that was the case.
it really. I think it was. I think that that's actually like fairly faithful to the time frame.
and was it really
Because
projecting as well that every single man in the movie recognized her as being in
Yeah,
Playboy?
100%.
that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
every man was like, "Oh yeah, I've read that issue. I
Yeah,
recognized
I have
her.
it on the table over here.
I have
Yeah.
the issue." Yeah.
Yeah.
But that felt true to you?
I mean, I don't know about that, but yeah, like, well, in this film, the sort of the truth of this world is that she is, even though she's like a cool kick-ass like sort of person who manages to not lose any of these children to any of the various like different potential murders that could happen at any time, or accidental deaths, she is still just entirely subject to the male gaze. And that's a Christopher Columbus like kind of, I mean, it's not specifically a Christopher Columbus thing, obviously, but like it's part of his thing.
Yeah,
Well,
but did you? There were some other parts about Christopher Columbus. Did you?
yeah, and
Uh,
just like how his trope is children in danger. Like that's
Yeah.
a trope that runs through most of his movies. Like he wrote Goonies and Gremlins
Yeah.
and
yeah,
he
yeah.
directed the Harry Potter movies and the Home Alone movies.
But like
Like
those are all things that
Oh,
I
I never
loved
thought
when I
about
was a
that.
kid. Like those are all things I loved when I was a kid. Like the idea, because as a kid particularly, you were, I don't know about you guys, but like as a kid growing up in the 80s, stranger danger is everywhere. You're being communicated to all the time that you are going to be murdered or kidnapped or something bad is going to happen to you. And I remember there were so many like all these cops would come to our like schools, and like late 80s and early 90s, like Michael Donaghy stuff, like all of these things were happening all the time. And even if they weren't, they felt like they were. And so Christopher Columbus movies, like sort of, I don't, I don't know what his motivation is. Maybe he just likes to see kids in peril. Maybe that's his kink.
Had you ever thought
But for
about maybe
like,
you were so afraid because of Chris Columbus movies?
no,
yeah.
it was probably a lot of, it was a lot of other things for sure. But just like I like to see these movies wherein kids are in peril, but they ultimately are the agents of their own rescue, and they always defeat bad grown-ups. Like that was always a running theme of his films.
Well, that's why I haven't watched Goonies in a long time. A
Which,
long,
and I've
long
never
time.
watched it, and you know that, and I know I
Yeah.
devastated you.
But it feels like a sort of a female-led Goonies gang. Like there's a lot of
This movie? You said?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
Adventures in Babysitting. Like
Yeah.
there felt like a lot of parallels because it was like about a gang of children who defeat adults.
Which was really, that was my favorite thing when I was younger.
Well, I think it's traditionally the Disney method is to kill the mother and then have some kind of animal or person have to go along, right? Even like going back further, Pippi Longstocking was an orphan, right?
No, her dad was always going off to do
Oh,
jobs,
okay,
but
but her
she had
mom
no
was
mother.
no mother. So
Yeah.
there's always, like, for some reason, children's stories are always about, like, no matter who does them, right? There's no,
Well, even going back to like Hans Christian Andersen and stuff,
yeah,
like there's always like Kids in Danger is just a really
Hansel and Gretel. Well, they get eaten. So.
yeah, it's just a really I mean maybe it's just because we grew up with all those kinds of stories that like we then get I don't know, brainwashed into thinking like those are entertainment forms,
But you know what? Here's the thing, though. It's almost a bit of a cheat because the way they change things is to make children the victors. Like you said, they always win,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But the people who wrote them, like Hans Christian Andersen, Little Mermaid turns into sea foam,
Yeah.
right? Like their
Yeah.
point was children are not going to win.
Yes.
Adults will crush you.
Yes.
And so it's like this big lie because that's true. That is true. It does not turn out Scooby-Doo where the bad guy goes, "You meddling kids." That's not how it turns out in real life.
I mean, yeah, like it gives you a lot of hope though for like how you can sort of overcome injustice, which I know I'm taking a lot of liberties here with like adventures in babysitting, and ascribing to it a certain like sort of much larger, grander story than perhaps one would normally derive. But like these were the kinds of movies that led me to think that I could do things like stand up to our grade 7 principal when she disbanded our student council and took away our graduation dance.
You took on the
And
spirit of Chris the babysitter and said, "There's no way, man, this is happening."
was a combination of that, Dirty Dancing, and Footloose. I swear to God, it was like those three things, plus a little Miss
Well,
Piggy,
Footloose is a
obviously,
bit
always.
more on the nose there for you.
Yeah. But like, this was the kind of, and I like, the parents all got together and got behind us, and we all formed our own committee, and like, we did our own fundraising, and we like defiantly rented the community center hall across the lawn from our like elementary school and staged our own prom in protest. Or not
Oh,
prom, but like staged
cat
our own
time.
graduation dance in protest. Oh, I like it. Hello, kitty. Hi, gal.
Lisa's cat just walked across the screen.
Yes. But let me just like let me ruin what you're saying. 'Cause
No,
that's what
please.
I enjoy doing. So here's the thing about this movie that I had forgotten, which is why I said that I felt like there was such a suburban urban divide. What's the inciting incident of this movie is a petulant suburban kid who doesn't like her stepmom.
Yep.
That is like the lowest stakes of all time. There wasn't
And then
even a conversation. She hasn't even done anything. She just doesn't like and threatens to poison her.
Yes.
But you know, as a teenage girl, I mean, who knows what this woman's doing, right?
Sure.
And that's it. That
Mhm.
starts our movie. Because Brenda then is running away from home and goes to the bus station, and that's why Chris and the kids have to go and save her. So our entire movie is based on some little bratty kid from the suburbs getting in over her head and trying to run away from home.
But and then her whole storyline is that the bus depot's really scary and she can't stay
There's
there.
homeless people. Oh, there's rats. It's awful. It's like the making fun of like the mentally ill and like for a laugh, right? Oh, that old guy wants his wants his house back, and it's a phone booth. Ha 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 ha. You know, like
Yeah, it's not the best look for a film, for sure.
Well, there's multiple things though that aren't aging super well.
Oh my God, like, well, the fact, like, one, like, the insult is that he said he apparently called Thor a quote-unquote homo, which is number one. But number two, well, no, actually, that's not number one. That's number, like, 604. Number 1 through 563 is, like, the white flight panic of, like, you know, oh my God, people of color live in cities, and they all want to kill us.
yeah. And then
This
if you get on the subway, you literally might be in the middle of West Side Story. Like, you just never know. The Sharks
Yeah.
and the Jets may decide this is the night
And
that
just
the
like,
rumble is going down.
black people are scary.
Yeah.
That's
yes.
like another message of the movie.
Yeah. Well, and one
Unless
of
they're
the things
jazz musicians.
Yeah.
well, that was yeah, and that's one of the things that I've thought about this a lot. And again, it doesn't really matter because it still is a movie that like obviously totally centers whiteness no matter what, and there's nothing good about that. But like, I've always thought about that jazz club scene as this sort of like dare to the suburban like white people is just like there are great things happening. You just have to like not come and judge people. And I've always thought that that scene was like one of my favorites in the whole film. But of course, she's just getting up there like her big sadness is that she's a babysitter, and that's her blues as like a white 17-year-old who's like
But she's
comes from rich
accepted.
families.
She's accepted
Well, that yeah, and so I
by the
always
community.
yeah. And I mean, it's a scene that I still love, which is awful, I guess. Well, it is, yeah, because like I can recognize like the racist implications of it all, and still very much enjoy that jazz club. And I didn't know that the movie, like when I was a kid, I didn't understand that that was like problematic at all. It wasn't until God, maybe 15 years ago at one of my rewatches, maybe with like my cousin when she was younger, that I was like, ooh. And I made that face of like, ooh, that's not ideal. That's
But to me, it's always
terrible.
that extra step where it's these people in this bar might have been like rehearsing and practicing and getting good at their art for 40, 50 years, but a 17-year-old can come in there and show him up. That's
Yeah. It's
boy.
yeah.
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 But also, like, how do you feel about the way women were depicted in this movie in general? Like
I really loved Mrs. Anderson's hair and that gold foil dress she was wearing. And
that was it. Honestly, if
Yeah,
that was
that
6
was good.
inches shorter, I loved that gold foil dress. I just want to go back to one more second, just because I didn't, also the thing about this movie being set in Chicago, as a Vancouverite, did not understand like the extra implications of the massive racial divide between the white flight and downtown Chicago and like a south side versus north side kind of thing. So I feel like that's something that like I only grew up and read about and like
Right.
had to read and have that reflected on. Sorry. Anyway, but
Right.
yeah, well, I really love the way I think I really love Chris and I really love Sarah. I think Sarah is like this cool weirdo kid who loves Thor.
Oh, I love Sarah. I could do without
Yeah.
Chris. Like, honestly,
I was
that was
I
actually
like
pain.
Chris a lot.
What?
I
What
was
was to like
act-
about Chris? Oh God. Okay.
I was actually
yeah.
going to suggest that maybe is Sarah the hero of this movie?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
she's
think
the one
so.
that has the idea of how they like escape from the mobsters.
Yeah.
She's kind of like the person that does the action that moves the narrative
Yes.
forward throughout the whole
I
movie.
will agree with one thing with Brenda. Like, this is like Dairy Queen, one flavor, and there's Chris going, I love the boy. He's my boyfriend. And then by the end, she's just met another guy who's creepy enough to say, "Will you be my babysitter?" And she's like, like, no, it is.
Yeah, it's not ideal. That for sure is
there's
not ideal.
And honestly, she is about to become Mrs. Anderson in 5, 4, 3,
Oh
2.
no.
Yeah. I mean, I thought she was so much cooler when I was younger, and I think the swearing was part of it. I loved the pink sweater. I loved that she grabbed the
The tilt is
knife.
impeccable. You're right. I mean, that hair.
I love
is-
that she grabbed the knife out of Brad's toe, and like held off the gang. I thought that she really like she did her best, but they always do. You're right, like that Sarah gets to just be an action hero, and Chris kind of always has to defer to whatever dude is standing next to her, that's really disappointing. There's one of the one of the only people who I think says a line that in anybody else's mouth would be like super gross, but I think the actor does such an amazing job. The man who plays Joe, the car thief that
Oh yeah,
they
when
get
he
into the
says,
car with,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
where he says like she doesn't hold a candle to you or whatever.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I just he is such a warm, wonderful presence, and I just like appreciate him in the film so much that I wish that we found out more about his backstory because I
We
really
just left
enjoyed
a
him.
man outside the window to die, though. Just reminding you. That...
No, I liked that though. He was gonna
Okay,
go back and
sweet.
get him. He was gonna go back and get him.
I
I don't mind leaving a bad man on a window ledge to die. You know what? In this world, I don't have a big problem with that.
but I agree with you with that line because it was sweet. But again, then it was she's taking her worth from, you know what? You're hotter than a Playboy model. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no,
You know,
I know. It's not. I
my
just
new
think that
college
she,
boyfriend that hunted me down.
you know, when I was 17, I would have found that romantic too. I got to be honest, like it's creepy. I didn't like the babysitter line, and I was like, I felt like the actor even felt weird saying it out of his
Yeah,
mouth.
that was just really weird. Why not just say you want to go out sometime? Like, why? Like, and they just feel like a little bit too young to be into that kind of flirting. Like, it was creepy flirting.
You know what I was thinking about though is just how Daryl, the best friend of Brad,
Oh,
God.
like
awful.
did you think like in the
He's about
80s
to become that Tosh guy, isn't he?
He honestly,
In
yeah,
in the 80s though was that considered hilarious? Like
it was.
he
I think it was
hilarious?
considered hilarious in the 90s. I think we're only very recently now asking people not to say those things.
Because like his
Honestly, it was.
storyline has all these things where like he interacts with like a teenage prostitute.
Yep.
The
And then,
director's wife,
yeah, Chris, who was played by
Columbus's wife.
Chris
Yeah.
Columbus's wife.
Look at Andrea's face.
Oh wow.
And then
That
that scene,
was information I did. Yeah.
and then there's that weird scene at the party where he's like kind of accosted by this like a college
Yeah.
woman,
Drunk girl.
drunk
Yeah.
girl.
Which would have been rape because he was 15 or 14, right? 14?
I found it much creepier when he looked under Brenda's jacket when
Yeah,
she's
so
passed
did I.
out on his shoulder in the
Yeah.
car. But no, like characters like that, like have you guys ever watched Girls Just Want to Have Fun, the Sarah Jessica Parker, Helen Hunt film from I think it's around 1985 or 86?
No.
It is very special. Shannon Doherty is also in it,
Was
by
that,
the way.
were you being sarcastic when you said very special?
No, I loved it.
Oh.
It's like a ridiculous movie, but I loved it so much. But the best friend in that is played by oh my gosh, Jonathan Silverman, and he's like just this super horn dog teenager who is constantly trying to like get girls naked, or he touches their breasts without their permission, or he's always like got some gross plan in place. But like if you think about as late as like the 2000s or maybe early.
Isn't that American Pie, which I've never seen, but isn't that the whole,
American Pie, at least the girls have a lot more sexual agency, but yes, it's super disturbing and awful because they like spy cam her and stuff like that. But even think about like someone like Michael Scott from The Office. Like he is like for the first like 4 years of that show, I mean, he's always sort of a problem, but for the first 4 years of that show, he's super gross. Like his behavior towards women is pretty reprehensible. And I think that the message often is like, yes, that is supposed to be funny and women are supposed to find that somehow endearing. But two, if the men never get what they want, that's somehow less threatening. And that you're supposed to be able to like see that as a joke because they are constantly foiled. And it's so gross.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just feel like he grows up to be the guy who made American Pie, maybe. I mean, that's what happened to him in real life. To Daryl. He grew up to be Sean Michael Leonard or whatever that guy's name is.
Oh, he does have 3 first names. You're right. What's that guy's name?
David Leonard? Sean Leonard David?
I just love that you're really committed to Leonard being part of the name. I like that. That's
Is it
great.
not a Leonard? Is it Sean?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, you guys.
I couldn't
here,
tell you. I'm
I'm
sorry.
going to type
So-
now.
Okay, well I'm so when you think about the career of Elizabeth Shue to this date, is this her signature role for you still?
For me, yes. And I also watched her on CSI, but she didn't get that much to do on CSI. So this for me is, but I haven't seen all her films. Like I've never even seen the Karate Kid that she was in.
I've seen The Karate Kid.
What?
That's
Never
that's a
saw
big
it.
one.
What?
Wow.
Never saw Cocktail.
Did you see her in Back to the Future 2 and 3?
Well, yeah, but I don't remember them because
Did you
was
see?
she replacing Leah Thompson basically?
Yeah. Did
Okay.
you see Leaving Las Vegas?
No, it centers
Yes.
on like an act of sexual violence, so I try to sit those out.
Oh, I've seen that one. I don't know if I would call that her best role because that's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, but didn't she? That's probably her most. Like, didn't she get nominated
Academy
for
Award.
awards? Yeah.
You know, the prostitute with the heart of gold always gets a nomination, don't they?
Well,
Yeah.
the Academy loves to see women being violated.
Yeah. Sean William Scott is that guy's name. But wait a minute. Wait for it. There is a Robert Sean Leonard.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's who I
yeah.
was thinking of.
Okay,
Oh,
okay. Yeah,
I was
okay.
thinking of
Yeah,
Sean William Scott,
yeah.
not.
What?
Anyway. Yeah.
Andrea Gin, what about you? Like, what's your like? Because you're like a
Oh.
big Elizabeth Shue fan, right?
It's right on her TV under hobbies.
Yeah, I heart Elizabeth Shue, right? Like that.
Ask me anything. And then just as an extra layer, she loves Andrew Shue as well. So
Oh
I
wow,
mean,
I had not
that's-
thought about that name for yeah. Anyway, you know what? I find that I've noticed this before when I rewatched High Fidelity with John Cusack,
Mhm.
but movies that I thought that I liked in the 80s and 90s are not aging well at all. Like this
Yeah,
is another
yeah.
example. But then
Yeah.
movies that I kind of ignored and never saw, like every Sylvester Stallone movie, like that I'm watching for the first time. Like I watched Cliffhanger I watched the Rocky series recently. I've watched every Sylvester Stallone movie recently because I've discovered that like his movies are actually aging fine because
they're not trying to do anything. They're just action films.
Yeah,
Nothing at all.
surprising.
The
But like,
action
also,
film genre is the same.
but
So
there's no like the humor is just like kind of common basic humor. It's not based on being mean to some group of people.
Well, it's not. It's
Or-
certainly not based on anything edgy, right? Like,
Yeah.
So, like, and I think, like, particularly those kinds of films that still center, like, they're still about like a male protagonist, going through like his. Usually, he's trying to triumph against either like something in himself or something like a foe or whatever. Like, I think it's just so many movies in the 80s, and 90s, and I mean, God, let's face it, still to this day. You know, it's just when they are sort of
But like
women get shortchanged a lot and
Yeah,
they get
like-
left out of it.
women in movies that I thought I liked, I'm now realizing were depicted in a really negative way. But in Sylvester Stallone movies, like, you know, Adrian in Rocky 1 is
Oh,
actually
she's
allowed
so
to be
great,
like a great character. She's fully developed. And, you know, like in Cliffhanger, you know, the female protagonist in that movie, she's like a helicopter pilot and she's like
in Roadhouse, the female protagonist is a doctor that stitches up.
yeah, like
crazy.
the women actually in Sylvester Stallone movies actually have cool jobs and you know they're treated you know like
I
as
think
real people.
I think you're really onto something. Not, I mean, obviously James Bond movies, I would say, have had to change because
Yeah.
they, boy, oh boy, you know, Pussy Galore was just that's quite a name.
Mhm.
I
And-
mean, you know, I mean,
yeah,
it's
I
a
know,
name that does exactly what it needs to do. Yep.
I mean, the funny thing is to me when like when Mike Myers did his James Bond spoofs and he gives the woman the name Ivana Humpalot, you're like, that's only slightly different than the real thing. Right.
It's
I mean,
very
yeah.
slightly.
Very
Yeah.
slightly. But I think you're right, Andrea. I think that action films, some of them, in a weird way, they are in some kind of male ideal of what they think it would be the coolest thing about being men. But then when you're watching this Chris Columbus movie, you're like, I don't know, are you the guy telling us what a teenage girl thinks? Because that's very confusing.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think like Sarah was written well, and I think that I understand exactly what you guys are saying about like Chris's character not being as strong as I definitely thought she was when I was a child. And that's totally true. I think, but like compared to a lot of other movies at the time that had like a young girl protagonist doing feminized labor, this was kind of, it felt like pretty cool at the time. Like Babysitting, not cool ever.
Well, no, there's that element. I mean, that's what they keep playing with her. Like, I'm retired. I'm too old for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. Which again reminds you of like, how young are you supposed to be taking care of other children? Like, anyway, it strikes me as 17 is the proper age to be taking care of a small child. You know, but
Well, and that, yeah, like honestly, I think about that all the time. I looked after so many children between the ages of 11 and like 17. And 11 was too young.
yeah, absolutely.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a child of today who's 11 babysitting? Like, there's no way. My nephew's
No.
like 10, and there's zero way he would ever be able to babysit in a year from now. Like, it's
Yeah.
No, it's like you're just becoming one of those tragic memoirs, right? And then Mama would leave me with the 11-year-old or something, right?
yeah.
I mean, truly, like, let's face it, I definitely have a tragic memoir in me in the future, right? So, I mean, it's fine. I'm just like.
I look forward to it, and I hope that in the later years, Elizabeth Shue plays you.
Oh my God. What a dream. So I think that aspects of this movie still pop for me. So I'm going to say it pops.
Yeah, I mean, it surprised me on certain elements of it. It was still a lot of fun. It's extremely dangerous, and at some points I was just like, I'm not laughing very hard because there's a child hanging off a building that will fall to her certain death any second. But I mean, hey, it was fun, right?
Oh,
I honestly,
we didn't talk about Vincent D'Onofrio.
yeah, I was just,
my
you know
God!
what? Okay, I was just about to say
I
that
love
the
him so
only
much.
thing I ever really remember is the Thor stuff. I found that about Sarah's obsession with Thor and his goodness, and the fact that she had this faith in Chris because she has faith in
Yeah.
Thor that you will thwart evil, and in a weird way, that whole evening was about good versus evil, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that, and I love that little gesture when she went to give him the winged hat, and he was
I
all
know.
like, "You're gonna give this to me?" And later on, he murders people in Full Metal Jacket. But before times, he's this guy.
Yeah.
So no, I think honestly, if you were to do ask a bunch of people who've seen the movie when they were kids, they probably the big thing is the Thor thing that they remember.
I honestly thought Thor was invented for this film.
She wanted
When I was
originally it was
8.
written. I read for She-Ra though. Originally it was written to be She-Ra, but
Oh,
Chris
okay.
Columbus only liked Thor.
Interesting. Because I honestly did not know that Thor was a real character. I was a big He-Man fan and a big She-Ra fan. And so I thought so as an 8-year-old, I thought, oh, okay, I didn't have a concept of like being able to use He-Man. I thought they were just doing like a knockoff of He-Man and had created Thor for the film. And
So your
it
knowledge
took
of
me
Norse mythology was very lacking as a child, is what you're saying.
lacking until I was at least 10 or 11 when I
Okay.
realized that Thor was his own character.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had no clue. I thought this was like an Adventures in Babysitting character.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like if you refocus this film to be about like Sarah and her kind of hero's journey through surviving this terrible babysitter,
I take
think
exception
that-
to it being a terrible babysitter.
then
When
I
she
think
has
it'd
therapy
be
later
an
on,
okay movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I take exception to Chris being a terrible babysitter. I think she shows some poor judgment occasionally, but
Her
she's stuck with these
charge
like.
ended up dangling off a building in downtown
Right?
Chicago.
Look, that kid ran away on her own.
How much work? Like like
How
much,
dumb is
what would it
Sarah
take
that
to be
she
a bad babysitter in your
8. That's
eyes?
why she has a babysitter.
she's
She doesn't make judgment
9,
calls
and
very
how
well.
dumb
9,
is
okay.
this kid to run away from the restaurant and go get caught by bad guys? Come on.
You know what?
that's
No,
the
she's
whole
a
thing.
hero. She went straight for the buffet, straight for the dessert bar,
Well said. Well said.
ate a bunch of donuts, and then left because
And then
what
knew where
was
her
going
parents
on in the
were.
restaurant was garbage.
And then
Because
went
what
and
she knew
dangled from a window.
instinctually, she knew instinctually I should go to my parents because this
Yeah.
whole babysitter business,
I'm gonna die if I stay
I'm
with
going
this
to die. This
babysitter.
woman
I disagree entirely. She was in it and she loved it and she had the best time.
You know what's going to be really funny is when Chris marries, I'm going to call him Paul because he looks like a Paul. I don't know what that guy, Nick,
Who knows?
or Brian, something like that. Some college
I mean, honestly,
boy in
like
Chicago
frat
name.
guy.
Frat guy. When she marries him and they're at their wedding, which will only be in a couple of years, they're going to have to invite the Andersons,
Yeah.
right? And they're going to have to give the speech about how they met. And boy, oh boy, are the Andersons going to be angry that night.
Yeah, I mean, they should be. They should
They
be.
really, really should be.
Yeah, like.
So
I
I
think
obviously will never be employed to write the sequel to this movie.
Okay, but AG, you didn't give whether or not it's a pop or not.
I'm gonna have to say no.
Wow. All right.
I'm sorry. I
No,
just
it's
couldn't.
fine. I totally accept it.
I think
didn't make
it
the
was the
film.
pop when I was a teenager.
Uh-huh.
Now when I'm watching it, I couldn't like it. But so now this movie makes me not want to rewatch any movies from my childhood because now I'm worried that I'm gonna see them for what the movie really was and not through like eyes of childlike wonder, and every movie's gonna be ruined.
Well, see, here's the thing. So often, this is one of the reasons that I'm so excited that you are on the podcast permanently now and forever. Is
I don't know if it's permanently forever.
No, it's just that like for the last several years, Lisa and I have watched a lot of movies from our childhood that apparently I still continue to mostly love, and Lisa often is in the position of hating. And,
Okay, but I took a lot of flack for that Tower Records business, like
Empire Records,
Records, whatever.
Yeah,
that's how much it stuck with me.
Yeah,
so I can't wait for this one.
Well, you hadn't seen that though ever. Like you were going in fresh, right?
And believe me, I wish I could go back to that person I was.
I know. but I'm just saying, I enjoy this being your moment, Andrea Gin, where you are confronting all the films of your youth and then deciding I never want to watch any of them ever again. I want to go through all your movies. Going to talk about what we recommend right now, and
Yes.
I've decided to just like jump in and go first.
Good.
I'm rewatching News Radio
Oh!
on the CTV app.
love
There's
that.
News Radio, and it's 25th anniversary this year. It started in 1995.
Oh, what in the
Yeah. I know, right? And it didn't really ever have reruns, so I haven't watched News Radio in a long time. Like, I mean, maybe it had reruns shortly, but it's been probably at least 17 or 18 years since I had watched News Radio. And so we're just in the middle of season 2 right now, and I love it so much. We know that Joe Rogan grows up to be a monster, and
Phil Hartman's dead.
Phil Hartman's dead, and like there's so many sad things.
Yeah.
Andy Dick is Andy Dick. Much more innocent time back then when he was Andy Dick. But it's so great to have News Radio, and like just the fast paced. The jokes are like just nonstop. Everything is so quick witted. It's been like a real pleasure to watch right now.
Yeah, that's perfect. Mine is the John Krasinski's news show, Some Good News, or SGN, that he was doing for YouTube. Have any of you watched any of those episodes?
I have, yeah.
No.
And
I think it's very charming. I like him quite a bit.
Yeah, it's just sweet
Yeah.
and silly and above everything. And maybe I have a soft spot for that right now with so much sadness. It's just the corniness of it.
Of course, yeah.
Just the charm of, and kind of, I think we had this discussion before that with a certain thirst celebrities are experiencing right now to stay relevant. There's
Yep.
been some mistakes out there. There's been some challenges
There have, yeah.
and some mistakes made.
Yeah.
So to have someone just figure it out, which I really like, and I kind of feel like the reason I like it after watching it a couple of times, I realized he'd kind of flipped the whole idea and said, we're not the famous people. You guys are making this content, trying to stay at home, working in the hospitals, and it's lovely, and
Yeah.
and I've been really enjoying it. So they're only out every, I guess, once a week, and they're just 20 minutes long, and they are funny.
That's awesome.
That's nice.
SGN, some good news.
Yeah.
I want to recommend, it's funny you mentioned David Chang, because I want to recommend his Instagram right now, because
Oh, it's cooking.
yeah, he's in isolation at somebody's home. Like, I don't think he's at his own home. He hasn't been really specific about that, but he's just been cooking with what these other people have in their kitchen. And so he's been kind of making the recipe super easy. The other day he did like one that you mostly use a microwave for. And so like he's just making he's this like incredible chef that's just doing like everyday cooking for people just trying to get by and
That's
with what's
awesome.
in their pantries. And so yeah, it's really cool to see actually.
That's
We're all
amazing.
just trying to get by. Well, let me just say, I'm really pleased that all three of us stayed at our city homes. Because
Can you imagine?
the
Can you
directions
imagine?
were clear, but I know everyone was all, but my country house and my third house and my beach
I mean,
house.
I would love to be in my mountaintop house, but I just
Yeah.
couldn't make the climb. Like I just could
Yeah.
not.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I was thinking of going to my jungle home,
Yeah.
but I was concerned about the weather.
You know what? Internet's
know?
not great from either of those homes, so I'm glad you both stayed, because otherwise
you.
All
we
right.
wouldn't have been able to do the podcast.
Can you imagine if I just made a second home for myself out of my patio?
When I'm finished here, I might go into the dining room. So
Pretty exciting. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks,
So thank you so much for
yes.
listening to us. You can follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. You could rate and review us 5 stars.
5
5
stars. And Andrea Gin is our producer and our co-host now, which is so much fun. And I'm going to butcher the words of Dr. Bonnie Henry, but be kind, stay calm, keep your hands clean, and take care, everyone.
Bye, friends.
Bye.